Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Don't Change Much podcast. This one is titled Facing Anxiety and features conversations with a couple of guys who speak from the heart and aren't afraid to bare a little of their souls at the same time. They are Dallas Smith, award-winning country music superstar and founder of the Lifted Dallas Smith Charitable Foundation, a nonprofit organization committed to ensuring mental health services are available to anyone and everyone in need. Also, TC Carling, the president and CEO of the Canadian Men's Health Foundation. TC is also a past vice chair of Anxiety Canada's board of directors. He also just happens to have 35 years of lived experience with anxiety. Now, without a generous gift from the Jack and Darlene Poole Foundation, the Don't Change Much podcast would not be possible. It is much appreciated. You may have heard that anxiety is one of the most common mental health concerns, yet most men don't talk about it or ask for help. We're fortunate that both Dallas and TC do and did. These two are highly successful in their respective fields and steadfast in their conviction to help others by telling their own stories. This is a conversation about awareness and personal growth. Anxiety and mental health challenges can affect anyone, including those who might be thriving in other areas of their lives. We'll discuss their own process of discovery, what they now know, and the effective tools and resources they use to take control of their mental health.
Manage your stress, not the other way around. For simple ways to improve your mental health, check out the free MindFit Toolkit from the Canadian Men's Health Foundation. Complete a self-assessment, access virtual counseling, and learn more about how anxiety, stress, or depression might be impacting your health. Go to menshealthfoundation.ca and access the MindFit Toolkit to start improving your mental wellness today.
Dallas, TC, thanks so much for joining us here today for what should be a really good conversation on facing anxiety. And before we get into some of the tougher questions, Dallas, what's it like getting back to somewhat normalcy, releasing music, touring, and all that kind of stuff?
Well, releasing music's been normal-ish. It's the touring aspect of it and sort of the day-to-day living of between the touring and the balancing of the home life that way. Yeah, it's been exciting to get stuff going back up again and getting back to work. Obviously a little nervous about it. It's been a couple of years since you've been on the road, but feeling pretty good about it.
So you still get nervous?
Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. Yep. Got nervous a couple of weeks ago. I played some shows that I hadn't played in a while. So yeah, it happens.
Good energy, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, read about your story a little bit, and from what I gather, discovering you had anxiety wasn't really an aha moment. It was more you needed answers as to why you were making certain decisions in life. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, it was that. Why I was feeling a certain way, why my body was feeling a certain way in certain situations. For example, I'd go to the bank and they'd be talking numbers and formulas and stuff, and just talking one-on-one about that, I'd have severe tunnel vision where I could barely even think, and realizing what that is. Yeah, it was a slow process for sure, but I can bring it all the way back into my childhood and just not knowing what that was back in the day. It's been interesting to kind of learn about anxiety and learn about these different things and applying them back to my memories of my childhood. And yeah. So like I said, it's been a long process, not an aha moment for sure.
When did you ultimately realize it was anxiety? Were you diagnosed?
Yeah, I was feeling like I kind of realized what anxiety was and realized that's what was going on kind of myself. But then I realized this is probably 15, 16 years ago, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. And those two things come hand in hand, the anxiety and depression stuff. So I started my journey down therapy and medication and stuff and learning more and more about anxiety and how those things tie in together. And it's been a long process of learning what medications work and for each individual and what works best for me. But it's still an ongoing thing. I've learned to control anxiety and channel it a bit, but it still comes times where it overtakes for sure.
Well, TC, I know your anxiety began when you're 10 or 11, and Dallas just talked about childhood. back then you didn't know it was anxiety. You weren't sure what it was. So what do you think it stemmed from? Was it uncertainty?
Yeah, no, I can point a finger directly at it. I had a pretty turbulent childhood. Certainly the first 8 to 10 years were quite challenging. I'm really mindful of that, especially at this point in my life with a 10-year-old daughter, and just how important these foundational years are, because never would I have imagined that the challenges in those first 5 to 10 years would be so prevalent as a 46-year-old. So I tick all the boxes for someone who would likely struggle with anxiety. I had far too much responsibility at a young age, a lot of uncertainty. It was unsafe. But the next 10 to 15 years, I sort of lived with it without knowing what it was. Life normalized a little bit, I guess. Desire for control was always there. Probably a lack of safety or trust was always there. But I had good people around me. And then as I entered my early 20s, I met my wife, who I'm still with 25 years later, and things got a lot better. But as I would echo what Dallas is saying, each of our experiences is unique, but it's a long process.
We can get to what tools you guys use to help mitigate the anxiety. But Dallas, you said, so you were diagnosed with clinical depression. Were you masking that in other ways? Because I think I read that you with alcohol, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So was that a way to mask something?
Yeah, it was. Definitely a numbing agent for sure. I would find situations where I would normally be anxious, and just having some drinks would get rid of that. So it just kind of went down that road, and never really was a problem for me where I'd wake up and have to have a drink in the morning. It was more, getting into social situations and end up binge drinking and just taking it a little too far. So yeah, that was a tool that I had used for many, many years, and it doesn't work too well in the end. I work in a situation, but in the end, it was pretty destructive, and I quit a little over 5 years ago. I found my anxiety has helped my anxiety disappear a little bit, or I'm able to control a little bit more just because of the, I'm not sure if it was just the amount of alcohol or the unknown of what my actions were going to bring me. It just seemed to bring a bit more stableness to my life when I quit drinking, a little more predictable.
We know there's still the giant stigma around mental health and admitting when someone has a problem. Did you ever try to hide it? Once you were diagnosed with the depression and knew you had anxiety, were you open about it right away, or it was something that you tried to hide and you didn't want to face right off the bat?
At first, so 15 years ago, yeah, it was extremely upsetting, and I wasn't ashamed of it, but it was a completely different lens that I had to look back at my life at and look at my life at, and it wasn't something that I wanted to go through that myself in a pretty small circle. So I really kept that quiet, and yeah, there was masking for sure. And yeah, it took a while, but it also took me a while to figure out that road before I was comfortable talking about it. It was the first time taking medication. It was the first time dealing with these things and acknowledging them and knowing what they were. So I kind of had to go through that journey with a small circle before I had opened up that was going on with myself.
Similar experience for you, TC?
Yeah, it's interesting. Most of the troubles in my early life were caused by alcohol in our home. So I was really committed to trying a different way. And at times I thought to myself, I almost wish I had found a way to cope with it a little more effectively, because as I was struggling, there was kind of no escape from it. And I would have wished for that at times. But, I lived with it on my own for 15 or 20 years through my teens and early adulthood. And then it just got to a point where I couldn't do it on my own anymore. And I reached out to a trusted acquaintance and started asking for some support. That was about 8-9 years ago. I remember clearly the first conversation I had with my still now therapist of about the last 8+ years. I almost needed to justify to her who I was. I remember saying to her, I've got this great wife, I've got a great job, I've got lots of friends, and our daughter's, healthy and 2 years old, and an A-type personality. I think I'm doing okay. And she's like, so is almost everybody I talk to, And these last 8 years have sort of played themselves out. I was telling a really close friend, obviously, the other day that it feels a little bit like a leaky canoe, because the things I went to work with 8 years ago, I'm kind of getting gold stars, and big check marks in the corner of the report card. But all these little holes in the canoe keep popping up, and we're trying to fix those as well. So I think for a while I thought this is something that I'll get over or get past. I came to the conclusion many years ago, probably the hard way, that that's not the case. So what tools can I put in my toolbox? What muscles can I build up to weather storms when they come?
I want to get to those in a moment, since we're still talking about kind of opening up about when you first discovered it, when you're first comfortable talking about it. Is it an open dialogue now? I know you both have kids. Is this something that you speak about in the home?
Yeah, I've got my medication on the kitchen counter in full view. It's pretty normalized. It's very normalized in my house. My oldest son is going to be 17 here pretty soon, and it's been something that I've kept my eye on with him and talking about anxiety, and he's experienced a little bit of that. So yeah, it's a very open dialogue here. My daughter, who's 8, talk about it as well, and it's medication is just the same as making yourself a smoothie in the morning and just part of the routine. No stigma around it at all over here.
Yeah, and I echo that. We have one child, she's 10 years old, and very open about it. It's funny to have sort of all of these tools at my resource and subject matter experts around me and be able to call on it and articulate it so well for her, when at times I wish I was doing so more effectively for myself. But, I think the simplest way we have the conversation with her age is that it's totally normal to be anxious, whether it's a big test or, a dance recital or sports, or for Dallas, a live performance. It's very normal to be anxious. It's just when it crosses that line and the thoughts become a little more uncontrollable. But what I've said to our daughter at its highest level is that there's only one way through it, and you got to walk through it. And so how do you walk through it as successfully as possible?
And you're both so open about it now. Has it been rewarding adding your voice to these conversations about mental health and trying to help others come to face same difficulties, Dallas?
Yeah, through this talking about it more, it's amazing, and it blew me away of how many people had the same experience. But I was completely unaware of it. Back in the day, you just kind of feel alone with it. Try to figure out why you're feeling a certain way, or if that way is normal.
Yeah, for sure. Somebody asked me not too long ago, somebody I really respect, when did you become so comfortable talking about this? And I said, when 2 things became clear. One is I didn't care what other people would think.
Yeah.
And 2, that I could help people. And a lot of that goes to, a friend of ours, Dan, from over 10 years ago, probably 2008, 2009, 2010, I started working really closely with Rick Rippon on his challenges. He had severe depression and other challenges, and he had a real desire to help young people in particular, similar to the kind of work that Dallas is doing with his foundation. And we were really close to getting it there. And then in 2011, Rick passed away. And it didn't mean that I ran outside right away and started telling everybody about my anxiety challenges, but it just started to get hit really close to home. Like, the more you can help people, the better off everyone will be. And assuming Dallas has had probably similar situations, but the number of people since I've become open about it that are now very open with me, even in private. I don't know if they're telling other people, or I'm the only one they tell, but I get calls quite often, quite honestly, from really close confidants and people that are just looking for some support.
You're listening to the Don't Change Much podcast. I am your host, Dan Murphy. Our conversation today is with Dallas Smith and TC Carlin. So I think we want to provide hope here in this space about the tools that we use, correct? And so, Dallas, what are some of the things you do along with your medication to help you live this, productive life, this busy life of mixing and balancing family and your professional business?
Honestly, for me, it completely stems from exercise and my diet. To be quite honest, I've learned that there's just certain things that are really going to trigger. So just maintaining a good diet and moving my health forward, exercise, getting my blood pumping. Generally, my days will be better than if I'm sitting around and I start my day in a stagnant spot. Even though I might be doing emails and stuff like that, I generally find that being outside and exercising and focusing, like I said, my health is going to keep me on the within the boundaries of normal anxiety and not crossing the line.
How difficult can that be to get that daily time for yourself, especially when you're playing, I don't know, like 5 shows in 5 nights with travel, etc.?
Yeah.
Can you still carve out the time to do it?
It's actually easier, to be honest, on the road. I find when I'm at home, and during the pandemic, I really found it to be quite challenging. I was able to focus on the family and be home and not working a whole lot, but it became very easy for me to not, I get the kids to school, whatever they were doing, and I could sit down and do emails and realize that I haven't eaten in a couple hours. I've had a productive day, but I'm not in a good headspace at all. And that's where I'll find just the bad stuff will start kicking in for me. So I have to really maintain that mindset and that forward-moving mindset with my health.
TC, I know you very well, and you focus a lot on physical activity and not just getting out to walk the dog, which is a big part of it too, but running half marathons or challenging yourself to do a certain things. And I'm guessing that has more to do with mental health and physical health.
Yeah, it certainly does. I don't think I was able to draw the direct correlation to it from day one, but it's really clear to me that I exercise on a daily basis for my mental well-being. And to Dallas's point, I try to eat for my physical well-being. And as a national foundation with a Move for Your Mental Health campaign, couldn't echo what Dallas is saying anymore. It's proven that physical activity for mild to moderate stress and anxiety and mental health issues is very, very effective. And for me, even when I'm having beyond moderate challenges with anxiety, exercise is really effective for me. That said, I joke sometimes. I like to do things that are hard, like the half marathon trainings or a spin class or something like that, because I don't need any more quiet time. I don't need any more deep thoughts by Jack Candy. Yeah. I've got enough of those, so I need to do things that are hard, and quite honestly, it's just so effective. Yeah, I really lean on the physical exercise to help my mental well-being. Is
that because that allows you really have to focus on what you're doing and nothing else can enter your head because you're focusing on the task?
Yeah, that's right. I've tried yoga and meditation, and I think those things are fantastic. And I think everybody should try them. But for me, I need to do something that's pushing myself to a certain point of, okay, how am I just going to get through these next 45 minutes? And they definitely alleviate a lot of the stress at the time. So
you also have the morning dog walk. Can routine help? If you have a daily routine and you start your day the same way pretty much 5, 6, 7 days a week?
I think structure in anybody's life, and not to the point where it's too extreme, but I think there needs to be some fluidity in it. But I think structure, some repeatability, some predictability. The dog walk, I've started with a dog walk every day, essentially since 2004. We're our second dog now, nearly 20 years later. And it's an awesome way to start the day, even if it's a short walk. You're outside, there's power in being outside in nature. And I think the more we can, roll with the punches when there's not fluidity or predictability is important. But the more predictability, the more structure. If you don't schedule your exercise, you're likely it's going to be one of the things that slips, And so I actually have scheduled exercise. I do it every morning at the exact same time. It's part of my day, and the day flows from there.
Similar to you, Dallas, do you have a structure routine, I guess, as much as life will allow?
To be honestly, when I'm on tour, it feels like I'm more structure at that point. Everything's very linear. This is what I do then. I do that then. Go to sound check. We eat generally around here. Go with these people. It's pretty predictable in that sense, even though the days look different. The routine's kind of the same, but at home, that's where I get myself into trouble because it's easy to not focus. It's easy to focus on other stuff. Getting kids ready for school for me at this point and driving them to school. It's busy, but it's busy mentally, and it's a little chaotic, and that's where I find myself shutting down a little bit. I've learned over the pandemic that I have to, as much as I can, get what I need to have done and then focus on myself before I'm going to have a good day.
What about actually performing in the moment? So TC uses extreme exercise and that clears his head because he's focusing on something. Is performing the same way?
Yeah, performing, like the anxiety going into that, it has been crippling in the past where it affected my performance. I've gotten, I think, just routine of doing that, more confident, caring less about what people think, as TC mentioned. Getting to that point helps. I always find it was the smaller performances where it was more face-to-face, more intimate performances that I would find I would really, really, really struggle to the point where I'd be forgetting words and almost not quite panic attacks, but I'm masking anxiety at its peak in those moments. So those have always been difficult for me. They've gotten better over time. But yeah, performance is it's interesting. I rarely get too anxious that I can't perform. Really rarely gotten that, especially in a big festival or something like that. It's always been channeled into decent, something I can use. But those smaller ones can be, in the past, have been just super horrible experience.
Can you differentiate between anxiety and being anxious, or is there a difference going into a show?
It's the negative thoughts and the panic. It's the difference between feeling you can't do what is about to happen and then feeling empowered by the energy. It's a very big different feeling for sure. And I've learned over time just different things, little tools that I've had, simple things like if I got too nervous, I would clench my fists and let go and breathing and just kind of settle myself down before going on. But like I said, it's generally been more outside of performing, outside of my career that I've that anxiety's affected my life the most.
You just mentioned breathing. So TC, for him, yoga might not work, and meditation might not work. For you, does that work prior to the moment? Can you use breathing techniques and so on to help deal with it?
Well, I tend to run out of oxygen in those panic attacks. So I've really learned just to, settle myself down and physically take care of myself in that moment. It helps. Yeah, but luckily I don't get like that within performing per se anymore.
Murph, you mentioned the word hope earlier, and I couldn't agree more. Like, I remember when I first joined Anxiety Canada as a board of directors back in 2015, I think, when they approached me. My desire was to be able to, for lack of a better word, put the face on men's anxiety. Not to put myself on a platform that I'd be able to do that, but essentially to be able to say, like me, this is my life. A great wife, a daughter, great friends, a great job, a support system around me, and life is good. And I also have this anxiety disorder. I've had it, I'm working through it, and I will continue to have it. And just for men and families that will listen to this is to build awareness about how common this is, to normalize those feelings for people, through conversations like this or resources on our website to educate people about things that they can do, and eventually build resources and toolkits so that people can take action.
Is that highly functional? Do you think a lot of people that have anxiety are highly functional in their everyday lives?
Yeah, my only hesitancy to answering that is that, I'm not a PhD or a psychologist, but with lived experience and with, really digging in on this professionally and personally for the last decade or more, I would say a lot of high performers, a lot of people that look like they have it all together are probably struggling with stress and anxiety more than they speak about publicly, which is totally fine. Going back to the time I was doing work directly with Rick, it wasn't about making everything public. It was just about making sure you realize that there are people and resources that can help you.
Mm-hmm. Until you're comfortable, if you ever are comfortable about speaking about it. That's right. You're listening to the Don't Change Much podcast. I am your host, Dan Murphy. Our conversation today is with Dallas Smith and TC Carling. And Dallas, would there have been a time, whatever it was, 15 years ago, that you would have thought having a family, having a career, touring, making music would have been extremely difficult under the circumstances you were living with back then?
It was easier for me to put together 15 years ago when I started going on this journey with the medication. Yeah, it was easier for me to put it together for my business life. It was applying it to my personal life. It was harder in my circumstance. My career started in 2000, and we had a huge song, Wasting My Time was a big song in 2001, 2002. And I had no idea what anxiety really was back in those days. That was my career really, I think, suffered because of it back in the day. I didn't have the tools. I didn't know what I was about to go on stage we played New York for the first time at a big show and opening up for a band there, and crippled in the bus, and I just got through it, but it was very, very difficult. I didn't have any answers for it. I felt very, very alone. It was just a continuation of how I felt in high school, as a youth. But these are just high pressure situations, playing in front of a lot of people and record labels and stuff. And it was, I wish I had the tools that I have now to go back in time and experience those things how I feel like I should have been able to experience them. Give myself the best shot. But having this second part of my career over the last, 10, 12 years, I entered it with a lot more skills than I had, skills and awareness of what was going on going into it. So I've really been able to not right those wrongs, but apply what I've learned in a similar situation, but new. And I've been really comfortable with how it's gone. It hasn't been perfect, obviously, but it's been a much more enjoyable experience these last 10, 15 years. And it feels like since I quit drinking is when I've really been able to apply it to my personal life. So it's been kind of in two different ways in my career. One, 20 years ago and how it's been the last 12 years.
Dallas, I mentioned earlier that someone asked me, why I became so comfortable speaking about it. And I said, because I realized I didn't care what others thought and that I could help people. You have a much larger platform than I do personally, and you're highly successful. Why have you been so generous to open up in this way and not just join this Don't Change Much podcast and support our work, but the work you've done elsewhere, and so willing to share your story?
I've got a lot of close friends. that I wasn't aware that they were struggling. And through talking about it, they've opened up, as little as much as they've wanted to. It's been a great, selfishly, it's been great for me to feel some camaraderie in that way and feel like you're not alone in that way. As the more that I share, and especially in this business, there's a lot of artists that I work closely with, and we talk quite openly about it and cheer each other on and stuff. So it's been a momentum. Snowball has really helped that move forward for me. Plus, been around in a public, I got a public job. And you kind of have to have thick skin. I've learned to have that, and you learn to not care. And it's been a skill that's helped me with this as well. So yeah, I just really open about it. It's very, very rewarding. And starting with the events and stuff, and starting slow with throwing money towards events, and it's been really, really rewarding for me, and it helps me move forward and keep my momentum moving forward.
Well, we want with this podcast is for people to know that there are avenues to get help. There are people you can talk to. There are tools you can use and websites. And you started one with Lifted, Dallas. Perhaps tell us a little bit about that.
It's foundation we started about a year ago. It was very difficult to start up during a pandemic. We managed to get a couple events under our belts and throwing money towards whatever city we play in. We'll raise money in those, whether it be via concerts, golf tournaments, other events, and that money will stay in the cities and be geared towards access for youth to get some help with mental health services and recovery programs, things like that. So it's been a great journey putting that together, and I'm excited to just have a lot more events and not only raise money but raise awareness and build a community around that.
TCU came back to the foundation after a little time away. And the name of this podcast is Don't Change Much. Is it possible people to start slowly in this journey of figuring things out for themselves before really opening up about problems?
Yeah, there's no question. In January of this year, we launched the MindFit Toolkit, and really it was a choose your own adventure, and it's still on our website and will be at all times. And really, it allowed you to do anything as small as listen to Trevor Linden or Simon Whitfield for a 90-second kind of chill out sort of meditation for guys. Or you could end up with 3 counseling services. And that's a pretty wide spectrum. There's an Oasis screening tool on there. So if you're wondering how you're feeling requires further attention, there's a quick 5-question, highly thought of, world scientifically backed screening tool that the men that took it in January and February on our website, 78% of them screened for moderate to severe anxiety. So it's very common. So chances are if you land on that website and you look for the resources, you can take whatever small steps you want. And I think that's really what it comes down to. It's you can't run a marathon if you can't run around the block. So how do you start, and how do you build, and how do you build the muscles? And the things that I've been trying to do in my personal life is just build up the resiliency, build up the strength that when things get challenging, I'm better prepared for it. And that's what our website does. That's what our toolkit was built for. And I think, the gift that Dallas is giving to other people, like by sharing his story so generously, and like others do, it allows people to be aware and think to themselves, oh, that sounds quite familiar. And then hopefully, through Lifted or through the Canadian Men's Health Foundation or other resources, you can end up somewhere and become better informed.
Oh, there's no question. Conversations help immensely. So Dallas, if someone's listening right now and thinking, I should probably do something, what would you say to someone?
Yeah, just go online and start doing some research. Start to see if you can find some similarities in the experiences that other people are sharing, and just learn about like the tools. The tools are out there. Yeah, just research. And honestly, therapy is really I'm a huge proponent for therapy. It's always a good tool to go sit down and talk with somebody and get some feedback.
Well, we greatly appreciate your time. We wish you the best of luck getting back to normalcy, so to speak, playing those shows, and carry on with such a fabulous career. We thank you for your time, TC as well. And thanks for just being so open once again, because the more conversations, someone might not have heard the one 2 years ago or 4 years ago, but hopefully with these conversations, more and more people understand that there are avenues to get help.
No doubt.
I appreciate it, Dan. And thank you, Dallas.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
We'd like to thank you so much for listening, and a big thanks to all of you who have already followed us wherever you get your podcasts. If you haven't yet, hit that follow button on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss any of our upcoming guests or episodes. For more helpful tips on improving your mental and physical health, please visit menshealthfoundation.ca and don'tchangemuch.ca.